Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's a beautiful little overcast day today, so I'm feeling very cozy. I'm wearing a sweater with no bra right now. I've got a little candle going on in the background. My tea is on my desk, and I'm just popping in here really quickly to let you guys know what you are about to see. If you are new here, hi, hello, I'm Carrie. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you did not know, I have a podcast called Soul Sugar Podcast, where hello Lanka, where we talk about things that we talk about on this YouTube channel, but we just get a little bit deeper, and I sit down with guests, people who are experts in certain subjects, or just a conversation I want to have with a friend, or people who have been through different things, and we just talk, we chat, we get deeper. It's a lot about how to live your best life, just like we do here, finding your inner magic, career stuff, heartbreak, health, wellness. We started the podcast back in February, so if you are just learning about Soul Sugar Podcast, then you are in for a treat because you have a lot of episodes to catch up on. What you are about to see right now is my first recording of the podcast. So this is the first time I'm posting a video on my YouTube channel of me recording the episode of Soul Sugar Podcast. My guest for today is Tommy Sobel. He has a neuroscience background, and he also worked with DreamWorks, and what he did at DreamWorks was he studied how people consume entertainment. So with those two things as his background, he created something called Brick, where he's helping people disconnect from their cell phones, because in this day and age, we are constantly on our cell phones, not out there living life to the fullest like we should be. So Tommy did a test on me to find out how addicted I am to my cell phone, and that was really interesting for me to find out. And this is just a recording of the podcast. So let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoy this. If you do, I will continue to post some of the Soul Sugar Podcast episodes up on my YouTube channel so you can see them, you can see me pop in here, and then you can see the recording of the episode right here on your YouTube subscription page thing. So give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying Soul Sugar Podcast. Give it a thumbs up if you are going to go check it out, and let me know in the comments below all of your thoughts about the podcast. If you are a listener to it right now, let me know what you think, who you think I should have on, what you're feeling. I want to talk about it. I want to have open communication with you guys because your feedback is the most important thing to me when it comes to this podcast. So I love you guys so much. I'm going to link the podcast information in the description box for you guys to check it out. We are on every single podcasting platform, so Spotify, Apple, like every single one of them. Anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find Soul Sugar Podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Here we go. Welcome back to an all-new episode of Soul Sugar Podcast. I am here with Tommy from Brick. He has come up with a 3-step program called the Brick Method to help people get off of their phones more in this always plugged in world. This is crucial, and I want to know more about what you're doing.
First, thank you for having me on the show. Very honored and very flattered that I'm the first male on the show.
You are
other
the
than
second
your
male.
Fiance.
Exactly.
Right, okay,
so
yes.
you're like
yes.
the first outside male.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Because Alex has just become part of Soul Sugar Podcast, I feel like.
That doesn't count.
I love that you appreciate that. Like when we talked on the phone before and you were like, I feel honored. I was like, I'm honored that you're honored. And this is why you're on, because...
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the Brick Method, but when I first started Brick, there was a few people that responded saying that the name felt very masculine. As I was, deciding the name of a company is kind of like naming a kid. I've always been focused on trying to make it for both genders or all genders and gender neutral. To be on a show that's called Soul Sugar, I feel like does fit with what Brick is, and to have you respond to our message and to have hopefully your listeners respond, I think proves that. So it's
well,
really
that's
nice.
why you're here, because you do think about those things, and that's really special. And I think that, of course, like Soul Sugar is a place for this conversation, and just the fact that you are trying to be inclusive in that way is one of the reasons why you're here. But another reason is because of all of the cool stuff that you're doing and the important work that you're doing. So tell us more about Brick. Tell us more about I'd love to know like the backstory of like where it became Brick, because I know that your background is in neuroscience and that you worked for DreamWorks and that you were
Steven Spielberg's assistant for a while there. So you have a really cool story. And if you could share that with my listeners, I would love that.
Yeah, sure. So, I have a background in neuroscience and was working on a 6-year long gestating project that finally got published, which was really amazing on this one portion of the brain. And around that time, I was offered to, be Steven Spielberg's assistant on his next movie. And I was like, you know what? I love science, but I love the results of science. I don't love conducting the science research. Let me take this amazing opportunity and bring my science interest into film. So I basically, served him for 5 years. And then in 2015, he promoted me to a new position in a new department as the junior digital executive. And so I was tasked to explore what DreamWorks Studios was going to do beyond film and TV. So like, what are we doing on Facebook? What are we doing on Instagram and Snapchat and VR? And so it was through this kind of exploratory position that I got to know a bunch of influencers and YouTubers and people who are in this space. And they were younger than me and kind of revealed to me that they were incredibly isolated and felt that they were in this constant rat race for needing to create content. If it was Instagram, they know they needed to post every day, or if it was YouTube, they needed to post once a week at least to keep on top of the algorithms. And over time, I think they were experiencing a lot of stress and burnout. And they were also younger than me, so they didn't realize that life didn't used to be this way. It's kind of just in the advent of the smartphone. At the time, I knew that I had compulsions to overuse my phone. If it wasn't even a full-fledged addiction, it was at least definitely overuse and dependency on my phone. And it was affecting my mental health. It was making me irritable and sleepless. I would check my phone in the middle of the night to make sure there wasn't an important email coming in. And it was really in control of my life. I was not in control of my life. And so I decided to try to tackle this problem with a daily challenge to myself. This is now in 2017. And so quick anecdote related to this. So my favorite thing in the world to do is read. And I have this bookshelf in my bedroom with like 150 books that I'd bought over the years. And for years, I had only read like 3 of the books. I would spend every morning and every night in bed just scrolling and swiping and checking emails. And my bookshelf would just look down at me, would glare down at me like a to-do list of a life that wasn't well lived. I mean, it was literally my favorite thing to do, and I was filling my time with this unintentional time on my phone. And so I challenged myself to put my phone down, to turn it into a brick for an hour a day to read. And over the course of that year, I ended up reading 28 books. That sense of achievement of taking back control of my time and doing literally my favorite thing again was just so priceless. It's what I now know is called a keystone effect, where you create one behavior change and it creates a cascade of other positive behaviors. And so my life really opened up after that, and I started to feel more confident in the real world. I could now put my phone down when I was in social situations. And just with that one rudimentary life change of 1 hour a day to do something that was meaningful to me. And so that was where the brick concept started. And I challenged some friends, hey, do you want to turn your phone into a brick for an hour a day and do something that's meaningful to you for a week, see what happens? They had an amazing response. A couple of them ended up deleting Instagram because they were like, wow, I realized that it's actually making me feel worse, and which wasn't my intention, but still pretty interesting. And then a few of them were like, this was really great, but I kind of wish that I could do this with other people. And so I was like, that's interesting. Let me try throwing phone-free experiences and events. And so I started throwing what we'd call brick events, which were phone-free game nights and dinner parties. And it just kind of grew into takeovers of venues, often with a focus of wellness, but always with a focus of creating more meaningful connections. And so, from 2018 till now, we've been about 2 years of doing events. We now do full phone-free weekend getaways where we'll get off the grid with like 55 people into a secluded either camping area, group campsite, or a secluded 110-acre property, mostly strangers. And it'll be either fully programmed with yoga and meditation and other activities, or it'll be kind of choose your own adventure and use the time to reconnect with yourself and other people in the natural world. And more recently, I've kind of gone a step further, and I now offer what you were describing as the brick method, which we describe as a 3-step transformational program to help you take back control of your phone habits. So many of us today suffer from what's called low volitional control when it comes to our phone use. And volitional control is kind of like saying the ability to say no to an unwanted habit. So if you're trying to focus on work, if you're trying to focus on something that's really important, but you find yourself checking Instagram and you just checked it 10 minutes ago, you have low volitional control. Or if you're checking your phone while driving and you know that that's unsafe and you don't really want to be doing it because you have your kid in the back seat, or just because it's unsafe or you might hit somebody, that's low volitional control. And so that was something that I realized I was struggling with, and I took that kind of rudimentary practice, daily practice of turning my phone into a brick, and have taken the past 2 years of research and development to now make this an actual training that we lead in. I do private one-on-one coaching, like a digital wellness coach, and then I also lead workshops that we have at our weekend retreats and around LA.
It's such an important thing to be paying attention to right now, and to be there helping people out, because, you know, I can relate to the content creator burnout and feeling like we always have to be connected, but I don't feel like that is just a content creator problem.
Yeah.
It's so many people, and I started noticing that through my friend groups, because I hang out with a lot of people who don't do what I do for a living, but they are experiencing the same problems. And I thought it was an isolated issue at the beginning. And I thought that feeling of isolation and loneliness and dependent on technology was because I'm a content creator and this is what I do. And so this is just part of it. And then I started realizing, wow, no, this is everybody. Like, even older people who grew up without technology in that way, like without smartphones. You know, I can remember what it was like I remember having a pager, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been able to become addicted to it at some point.
It's multi-generational.
It's multi-generational. And I think what's really fascinating is that 15-year-olds today don't know what life was like before that.
Yeah.
And so it is something that is crucial, because you're right. It's not safe in terms of checking your phone when you're driving and having this addiction to it. And you mentioned, you know, the one thing that really is true for me today. I've really put in a lot of work to be away from my phone more. I remember when I was single, living in Silver Lake in my apartment, I remember that I was at the worst with technology at that time. This was probably about 3 years ago, where, you know, I was living alone, so I didn't necessarily have anything to be away from my computer at that time, really. And so work was like my number one thing. It was my passion, and my business was growing, and I was just consumed by it. So I would wake up in the morning and I would put up my lights and I would put up my camera technology, and then I would take all of that and I would put it into my computer technology, and I would edit it, and I would be in front of my screen, and then I would upload it, and then I would share it on Instagram, and then I would answer my emails, and then I would go to bed. And it was just this consistent thing that I just started realizing, oh my gosh, this is not healthy. I'm feeling lonely. I feel so isolated in this situation. And the more I grew, the more I realized, okay, I need to take steps in the right direction here, or else I'm just gonna fall down this slide of technology and just never come back the other direction. So I think it sounds similar to what you experienced in terms of that. You had some really crucial things at your disposal that you had experienced that you could implement into your life. And the fact that you're sharing that with people, and sharing with people how they can get through that, it's important in this day and age. It's real. It's very real.
Yeah, I mean, this new burgeoning industry that we're calling digital wellness, I believe is essential to wellness, to having, to improving your mental health. And I really like what you were just saying. And it's kind of like why the classic chef you think of is like an overweight guy, because they're just surrounded by amazing food all day. And so they're going to eat it. And what we kind of suffer from that, I mean, especially people who are creators or people who are in creative fields, the stimulation from their phone and the sense of the follows and the likes and the responses that you get are so engaging. They are just like candy. They are just like the donuts that a chef might have or a cook might have in his bakery. They give you that same pleasure chemical of dopamine, which is this endless searching neurochemical. What we're trying to train people with in digital wellness is to be a skinny chef, so you can be surrounded by all the amazing tools and foods of digital foods, or reap the rewards of your digital labor without succumbing to it and eating it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but only having it for dessert, or having structures around it so that you're not only consuming junk food all day.
Yeah.
And so like be the skinny chef.
I know for me, my first step, and I want to ask you more about the way that your steps and how your steps work and how you can determine really how if somebody is addicted to their phone, and we'll get into more of that. So what I know for me, like I would wake up in the morning before and always check my phone when I was in that phase where I was just really addicted to my phone. And then now what I try to do is when I wake up in the morning, I try not to keep my phone in the room. And I went through a phase where I was so good at this, and then I one day, just because my charger was in there, I just started putting it back in my room again. So I keep it across the room. And when I wake up, what I try to do for an hour is to just have my coffee, sit on the couch with Alex, my fiance, with the dog, and just have our coffee and communicate and just be present. And that's something him and I both practice, so it does make it easier.
Yeah.
I think that things come up in our relationship sometimes where it's like somebody's checking their phone at dinner or whatever, and then the other person gets annoyed by the person checking their phone. And I think that that's so common in relationships today. Or potentially some people aren't even getting annoyed that the person across from them is on the phone, and they're just going to be on theirs too.
Yeah.
So I think that there's different parts of it. And I know that's something that, I want to ask you about too, is like, how does that affect a relationship, and what have you learned through that process? And there's just so many questions I want to ask you. So first off, I want to know more so what the steps look like and how you can determine. So kind of just tell me that path.
Sure. Yeah. So with the brick method, the name of the game is volitional control, like I said. So that is your willpower, your self-control. And so many of us today, because we were handed, I actually don't have my phone on me, but because I have phantom phone right now. I just reached for it.
We're like, where is it?
Yeah, because we're handed this amazing tool that has more technology in it than what got us to the moon in 1969. I mean, it's this supercomputer in our pockets, but we weren't taught how to use it. And so many of us are now dependent on our phones because we've been overstimulated by that dopamine that we get from every notification and every email and every like. And so we have low volitional control. So what we offer to help people understand where they're at, do they have digital dependency? How are they dependent on their device, or are they in control of their phone? We have what we call the Volitional Control Survey. It's on our website, but it's basically just a 10-question survey that allows you to determine what your volitional control rating is, and you get a percentage. And then that's something you can also treat as like a baseline. And then as you continue to work towards digital wellness, you that can change over time, and you can use that as a metric for improvement. So that is something we could do.
You want to do the survey on me right now?
We could do it. You want to
Okay,
do it?
let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm nervous because I know I think I'd be better than I was 3 years ago, but I know I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form.
And I'm not either. I mean, remember, the reason why I'm doing this and I created this company was because I had a problem, and I wasn't seeing any structures in place that was working to solve it. And it first started out with community. I mean, when you're surrounded by people who have the same values of you or are doing healthy things, you're more likely to be healthy and follow through and commit. And I feel like that's actually getting into what I was going to say about relationships, where when you're just by yourself, you really have to set up rules for yourself. It's part of like environmental design. How can you set up a lifestyle and an environment for yourself where You're not going to be tricked by your own temptations. How can you set yourself up for success? And so, again, to use the example of food, if you're trying to go on a diet, every good trainer would say, first throw away all of the food that you snack on that's unhealthy. Throw away all the cereal and the cookies. Like, just don't give yourself easy access to it.
Yeah.
Make it impossible to do the bad behavior. And so when you're alone, it's really all up to you to be like, okay, what is intentional use and what is unintentional use that will leave me feeling worse? When you have a relationship, it's amazing for a bunch of reasons. One is that love, as an emotion, that's something that you share, love has been shown to be an antidote for addiction. So I'm not calling this full-fledged addiction, but even if it was as bad as an addiction for many of us, love has shown to increase feelings of self-worth. If somebody loves me, then there must be something worth loving, and maybe it is worth me working towards having better habits. And so having that in your life is obviously something that not everybody has it at any given moment, but can also be a really great impetus for improving habits. And then they can be your accountability buddy, your accountability partner, and sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that it could, be something that you could argue about. Like if somebody is on one side of it and they're like, I think we should not have our phones at dinner, and then the other person may pull it out sometimes. I know for my fiance and I, like we go through phases. Like right now he doesn't keep his phone in the bedroom and mine's in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there's things that like we go through phases. So, and before my phone was out of the bedroom and his was in it. And now he's like, why is your phone in the bedroom now? And so it's like, it's this interesting dynamic. Yeah. And so I think that I'd love to get more tips from you if you have them in terms of like how to navigate that. But first I want to know how addicted I am.
Okay. So we're going to take the volitional control survey. Super short, 10 questions, no pressure, nobody's perfect. What I will ask you to do is just, maybe even just close your eyes if you want, and I'll ask these questions one by one. You don't have to do anything except say yes or no if you feel like these statements apply to you. And don't think too much about it. Use just kind of the immediate response. If you're feeling a yes or feeling a no, just the first feeling will be what we need. Okay. I find myself checking my phone out of habit for no specific reason.
Yes.
I open my phone for a specific reason and then lose track of time on it.
Yes.
I find myself checking my phone when I'm trying to focus on something more important.
Yes.
I check my phone even when I don't want to.
No.
I wish I spent less time on my phone.
Yes.
I check my phone in the morning right after waking up.
No.
I check my phone one last time right before going to sleep.
No.
If I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll check my phone.
No.
I check my phone while in social situations, even when it might be inappropriate.
No.
I check my phone while driving and not just to navigate.
No.
Okay. So you scored a 60% volitional control rating, which would put you in the middle category for volitional control. So that means that it's classified as having impaired volitional control, which is still very strong. It's better than most people today. It means that your phone use likely feels like a nuisance, or it's frustrating. It might be kind of annoying to you, but you have control over a number of behaviors. There are still a number of phone habits that you do not have control over.
Yeah, and that sounds about right, because there are things that I feel in control of, and before I didn't. There was a time where I didn't feel in control at all, just in terms of like, why am I checking this thing all the time? And because it is part of my work too, it was like, I'm working kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
you can use it as an excuse.
It's not. And so you still need to detox and be away from it. And I think that like if we're all honest about it, then it's a step in the right direction, because I can sit here and say that I've never had a problem doing, like, you know what I mean? And that's easy to say, but it's not the case. So I think that if we're all honest and like we own up to the fact that we do experience this and it is a challenge, I think that that's the first step. And so I think it's great that you have that survey where people can really get the questions, the hard-hitting questions that are like, hey, like, let's really see.
Yeah, let's really look at this. And Yeah, I really like what you were saying there, because I feel the same way. And I think that, what we're also trying to convey here is, like, by being honest about it, is that there's no shame in it. These apps in our phones and the phones themselves have been designed to be addictive. So it's not our fault that we are now feeling these compulsions and feeling this dependency on them.
Yeah.
We are working against the top smartest 1,000 engineers in the world that are being paid big bucks to keep us hooked.
Yeah.
And so it's really an uphill battle. And I remember I was feeling like it was my own shameful problem that I wasn't in control of my phone use, that it was controlling me. And now that I've released that shame, it makes it actually easier to act on it. They say that shame is actually a disincentive to habit change. And so that's actually, I think, what kind of one of the issues of screen time is, which is that app on the iPhones that tells you how much time you're spending. So often people end up spending twice as much time on their phones than they think they did before they launched screen time. And so that kind of makes you feel worse, because you're like, oh my God, I thought I was spending like 2 hours on my phone, but it's really 4 or 5 hours. And so when you feel worse, you don't actually put in the work to improve your habits or look into it. That's the foundation for digital wellness. It's like, it's okay that we're not perfect, and wanting to improve your habits is the first step. And hopefully the Volitional Control survey allows people to take something that they might not think was an issue and realize that it could be better. And then the rest of the BRIC method and what we offer in the BRIC community is solutions for that.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, I mean, shame isn't a way to get through anything, Like, when you start with shame, then you're just so clouded by everything else. And I know for me, the most frustrating thing is when, I'd say, like, this is my biggest problem when it comes to my phone, is when I am working, I'll be on my computer, I'll need to get something from my phone to send an email. I'll need to, like, reflect back at something, look at numbers for something, look up a phone number, check a photo or something like that. And that transition from workspace to cell phone sometimes captures me, right? To where I just remember even just yesterday just getting frustrated and thinking, oh my gosh, like, why am I checking Instagram right now? I'm supposed to be getting this thing for work. In that moment, especially because you and I had been talking and I was looking up more about, like, what you do, I was even becoming more aware and paying more attention, because I think BRIC just in itself makes people think more. Like, what it is makes people, like, take a step back and think, okay, yeah, that's probably important because I'm looking at my phone a lot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're labeling something that didn't exist before.
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. And so, like, talking with you and, like, researching more about what you do, like, led me to the moment before even, like, knowing more. I was able to, like, notice that, take a second and go, oh, wow, I am, like, getting lost in my phone right now when I don't want to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess I should have answered yes to one of those questions, though, because it said, do you check your phone only when you want to be, or do you check your phone when you don't want to be? And I might have said no on that
I think
one.
you said yes.
Let's check.
Yeah, I find myself checking my phone when I'm trying to focus on something more important.
So
You
I said yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I was
this is
honest.
a good-
Yay!
yes. Yeah.
That's my biggest thing, and that's the thing that frustrates me. And yeah, I probably do feel shame around that at times, because I try to be the best version of myself, and I think we all want that. And I think that having access to, you're right, this, like, incredible technology that can tell you anything at any time, like, how do we not pull that out as much? Like, how do we not become addicted to it?
That specific behavior that you're talking about, of reaching out for your phone with a specific intention, but then getting lost and doing something else on your phone, is the most difficult thing to change, because it's a lot easier to not check your phone if it's in airplane mode and it's across the room and you can't reach it. You are doing what you're talking about of the environmental design, where you're making it impossible for you to do the bad habit. But if you're in the digital realm, it is so curious, and you see a text you didn't think you were going to get. I mean, we have evolved to respond to novelty. What is the rustling in the bush over there? I mean, that helped us survive for millions of years, because that could have been a jaguar or something, or another predator. And so our most basic primitive part of our brains constantly responds to new. And so if you are going to your phone and you're seeing a new red notification, which also heightens the dopamine response. That is like millions of years of evolution that you're fighting to then only look at that photo that you were intending to. And
See, that's where your neuroscience comes in handy, because you can go back and really look at that and think, okay, like, why are our brains working this way?
Yeah, and so it's accepting also, I think, even just releasing the narrative that we tell us about that too. I mean, these devices are optimizing our vulnerabilities. That's where the volitional control comes in, where you are in the brick method. As we increase the volitional control, you go from being like, okay, I'm going to my phone for this intentional reason, and I'm not going to get lost in something unintentional. And every time you feel that craving to, let me just check Instagram or check text real quick, instead of succumbing to that impulse and checking that other app, you will still feel that craving to do it. I wonder what's new is often the kind of little feeling that we tell ourselves. But every time you don't do that, you stop reinforcing that behavior, because neurons that fire together wire together, and neurons that fire apart wire apart. So if you feel that craving and you do react to the impulse, you allow yourself to get distracted, you're reinforcing that the next time you reach out to your phone to do something purposeful, you're more likely to get distracted.
Yeah.
So if you're able to just sit and be with that uncomfortable feeling of not checking, of not seeing what that new notification might be, accepting that light, but it is still a negative, it is an uncomfortable feeling, as opposed to a strong negative feeling like loneliness or boredom, which we can also feel associated with our phones. You no longer reinforce that bad habit, and over time it diminishes altogether.
Yeah. What do you think about the feeling of feeling frustrated by it? Like, for me, I will, not necessarily frustration, but almost this like turn my phone over, don't want to look at it, don't care if it's ringing type of thing. It's almost like I'm sort of mad at it for being what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, even my fiance feels that same way sometimes, like, because we're both content creators, like, we're both like, oh, get this thing away from me. And I think that that's probably healthy to a certain degree when it I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would think, because what it is, it's me realizing the frustration of the fact that it is addicting, and just like keeping it away and wanting it to be away. But I think that there's probably a happier place to be in, where it's sort of like, and I do feel this very much so at times, where, I feel like I'm going to put my phone here, and I garden. So I go out to my garden all the time, and that's my favorite place, because sometimes I'll do stories out there if I feel like it. But most of the time, honestly, I'll leave it inside and I'll go out there and just garden. And that's a hobby that I've developed that keeps me away from my phone.
That's awesome.
Because I think that if we don't have a hobby necessarily, you really love to read, and I really love reading too. So I understand where you're coming from there. And the cool thing about reading is that we can't really do anything else but read when we're reading. And that's how I feel about watercolor too. I can't really do any, I guess it's a little bit easier with watercolor, but there's things that I know for me that's been helpful in my path is developing these habits or these hobbies that keep me away from my home, my phone. That's dun dun dun. My phone is my home. No, but keeping me from my phone in these situations where I'm really loving this experience, so I don't feel the need to grab for it as much, because I'm living here in this moment because I'm enjoying it. Is that a habit that you think is a healthy one? Do you think, what are habits that you recommend in terms of relationships, or if you're a single person trying to be off your phone more? If somebody isn't able to attend one of your events right now, what do you recommend?
Well, I mean, I think gardening is what you're describing is a replacement behavior instead of checking your phone, which is awesome, and is also something that we promote and we coach people through with the brick method. You've found gardening and a bunch of other things yourself, like watercolor, that I think is super important. My stuff, it's reading, it's surfing. I think anything that you do for its own sake, not for accomplishing it, it's not trying to finish it, but the purpose of it is to do it. It's kind of like the difference between play and work. Things that you get into a flow state where you kind of lose track of time, or you might even lose a sense of self. You're just so deep into it. Yeah, you get into that flow state. That's really helpful too, because what you're doing is you are getting dopamine in the real world. You're getting that pleasure neurochemical, but you're also getting oxytocin, which is this, it's like having a full meal. It's the group bonding neurochemical, and it's released during meaningful experiences, especially with other people. So when you get that oxytocin from gardening with your fiance, and then you come back to your phone, you feel full, so you don't feel the compulsion to get that dopamine. It's just that candy is not as tasty anymore, or you're at least less likely to get lost into it.
One thing that I wanted to talk to you about is morning routines. On YouTube, there's a really popular video called Morning Routine. And almost every time I watch one of them, it's somebody who's guiding you through their morning routine. And every time it's a girl waking up and she's like, and the first thing that I do is check my cell phone. I mean,
Really?
Everywhere.
Oh my God.
And they're normally a little bit younger. Like I'd say I'm 31 now, so I'd say like maybe they're, I don't know, 18 to, around that area. And it's such a normal practice that it's not weird for it to be in the video for like younger people to see. And it's literally like a girl opening her eyes and being like, once my eyes adjust, I check my phone. And it's so common.
Yeah.
And
People are going to look back at that, and it's going to be like waking up and smoking a cigarette. I think it can be extremely detrimental to your day. I mean, for one, when you're asleep, we used to think that the brain rested like we rested, but recent research shows that the brain's actually just as active, if not even more active, than we are awake. And so what it's doing is it's consolidating memories. It's solving problems for you for the upcoming days and weeks. It's it's resetting a bunch of neurotransmitters so that you can feel rested. But when you wake up, you come out of this dreamlike, flowy, creative state, and it's an opportunity for you. You're also extremely suggestible, so it's an opportunity for you to decide what's your intention for the day. What are the most important things that you want to do, and how can I take my time to be fully present and conscious in it? And if you use your phone as the alarm clock and then end up looking at it and then end up opening it and responding to seeing everything that's on it, you are immediately switching out of that creative, flowy, suggestible state into this overstimulated cortisol-inducing, which is the fight-flight. It increases your anxiety and stress, where you're seeing everyone else's emails and to-do lists for you. They say that your email is everyone else's to-do list for you, and you're very suggestible to that because you're coming out of theta and these lower brainwave states. And so if that is the first thing that you're seeing in the morning, that then becomes the baseline for your entire day, where you then have as the foundation this kind of low-grade anxiety of needing to, fulfill your to-do lists and just go. And you might not ever accomplish your intentions for the day. You might not even establish what they are. And so I think that part of the general issue today of why we are seeing an increase in anxiety and stress levels is because we are checking our phones first thing in the morning, and we are putting ourselves in that sympathetic dominant state, which is that fight flight state that you have the entire world. You're seeing news from the president, you're seeing the fires locally, you're seeing text from your mom that you need to figure out how to respond to. Like it can be very it's not bad to look at in general and respond to, but especially when you wake up, when you're in that suggestible state, it can then set you there for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So
this day and age when things are so stressful, like, our political situation, we both live in California, where there's fires happening left and right. It can be a really intense thing to wake up to. And also waking up to work too sometimes,
Yes.
because you can wake up and open your email, whether you are a content creator or not. You're opening your phone and you're checking your email potentially, or even a text message from your boss or whatever it might be, and you're going straight into work. So you're not having a moment where you're like, this is for me.
Yes,
and I think
exactly.
that for me has been helpful in my process, is saying like the mornings are for me. Like an hour of my morning is for me. So no cell phone, no responding to text messages from anybody that revolves around work. I'm lucky in the sense where I do like waking up early. So that first hour, nobody's even really texting me at that time because nobody's up at 6 a.m.
And you wouldn't even know anyway because your phone's in airplane mode.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. But I feel like if I wake up earlier, it's my time, and nobody else is awake yet. So it's also me liking to wake up earlier because it's easier for me to take that time.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that anybody else is awake, so I don't feel the pressure. But
that's really smart.
Because it's just like that moment for me to have that time. And so nobody's needing that time from me. And so I that's how it was easier for me to do it. Now I just feel good about not having it around until I need to. But it was easier if I was just like, okay, well, I wake up early anyways and nobody else is awake, so I'm taking this time back to myself.
Yeah, there's a great brain coach who says that the morning should be about output, not input. So if you're waking up and you're seeing all these inputs from other people, you aren't able to output and do things for yourself. So whether it's journaling or writing, or for me, it's trying to figure out what are my top 3 priorities for the day. And then I also work out in the morning. And so that allows me to, I'm the same way. My first hour of the day is phone free. I charge my phone at my desk in the other room. I wake up, I have a very specific routine that is structured for me to feel a sense of accomplishment and build momentum towards a feel-good day of progress before I even check my phone. Because if I check my phone, who knows what is going to come up with? It could totally change the trajectory. Yesterday, my parents had to evacuate from their house. And so if I hadn't already had my morning routine, that would have, I was able to respond better and more fully because I had already built up the momentum to be fully present with them.
Things like that, when you're dealing with security stuff too, that can be hard with the phone. Isn't there a way on cell phones though to, side note, question, maybe because I just heard this from somebody, because they were able to unsilence one individual or a specific amount of people.
Yeah, you create VIP. I just reached for my phone again. You create a VIP list, so that would be your loved ones, your parents, your partner, and anyone else that calls you. Your phone's on Do Not Disturb, so it doesn't ring. But anyone that's in that list, it will go through.
Yeah.
So that can be really helpful. You can also change that at any time. So if it's during the workday, maybe you are waiting for a specific call from your boss, and so that would go through. But I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb all day.
Yeah, I texted you earlier to see if you got into the building okay, and I got your reply.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that's brick mode, which is one step further from Do Not Disturb. So not only am I not seeing the message, but there's an auto reply that anyone who texts me sees, so that they know that I haven't seen it yet. And it relieves me of the pressure of feeling like when I do go back to my phone and I see that notification flood, that I'm behind on responding to all the messages. And you knew that I wasn't ignoring you.
Exactly. One thing that I definitely want to talk to you about that we haven't talked too much about yet is your events. I want to know more about your events and what they're like and all the things.
Cool. Our last event was called an instant choir, where we get 70 people into a room of all singing abilities, and the leading voice coach in LA transforms us into a live choir with a live band.
So fun.
And we always sing a classic, nostalgic 80s song usually. So this was a Hall & Oates song, You Making My Dreams Come True. And
I was going to do it, but then I decided not to.
Oh, you were going to come? Or you?
No, I was going to sing that song just now.
Sing it.
No.
So that's a 2-hour experience where someone like me, it's the closest I'm ever going to get to being in a band. And it's filled typically with a bunch of strangers who over the course of this 2-hour period, group singing actually boosts oxytocin, that group bonding neurochemical, faster than anything else. So you come out of that experience having sung with all these 70 people you haven't met, but you feel a sense of community and connection, so that, again, when you go back on your phone, you're like, my phone's nice, but I'll just check it for 5 minutes before going to sleep. You don't get lost in it. It's a really great community building event. It's filled with people who have always felt that they had a horrible voice and have never sung outside of the shower, and they end up just letting loose, and you feel really good about it. You kind of get high on these natural chemicals.
Yeah, people just doing something that a lot of human beings are so afraid to do, and being together doing it. And not only is it cell phone free, but it's also just like getting rid of comfort zones.
Yeah,
and just
you
like
break
stepping
out of your
of
comfort
it.
zone. Exactly.
And I love that. And
Yeah.
just like the idea of being in a group of people doing something fun, whether it be like the choir or whether it be the trip to Joshua Tree that I saw on your Instagram, like people getting together, and like the fact that nobody's using their cell phone to take photos or stories or like, let me stand by this Joshua tree and get a cute photo. And maybe you can, like with film cameras. I noticed you guys had film cameras, which are so creative and so cool and so amazing to be able to use. And there's a big difference between a film camera and using your cell phone, just because, one, using a film camera, you have to be there, to take that photo, and you have to be very present because you only have a certain amount of film. And so,
and you're developing it later.
Exactly.
So you can't think of what you're going to, the description.
It's
or
not
the
instant
filter.
gratification like a cell phone.
Exactly.
Just thinking about something like that and people being present in that and looking into each other's eyes and being there and experiencing it then in that moment is such a luxury this day and age, which is so bizarre. But it truly is.
Yeah, it's a luxury, and I think it's a necessity. I mean, we are starving for that. That's what's been most valuable, I think, with the Brick community, is that we're just giving permission to people that want this to be phone-free with other people. It doesn't feel good when you're hanging out with people and they're on their phone. I mean, even though it's been normalized, it's kind of rude. And so we're trying to denormalize it. And when it's amazing. I would love to have you at an upcoming event, but especially with the weekends, it's incredible how quickly people bond. We'll be there for 2 days, and it feels like 2 weeks because you're just fully present and fully engaged. There's one guy I remember from that Joshua Tree trip who was like, listen, man, I can never remember anybody's name, and it's just like something I've always had my whole life. And he said, I effortlessly remembered 53 other people's names on this trip. And he's like, it's just because I was there, and I was just there with everybody. Yeah. So there's a lot of really interesting discoveries that you make. And even if it's realizing, oh my God, I've like thought about my phone 50 times today, and oh wait, I can't show you that photo of that mountain I climbed last year. Like, you realize how often you reach out to it that you didn't think you did.
Yeah, because it unfortunately has become a comfort spot for us. And one of the things that I find fascinating in your work is that you're starting to realize that people are utilizing the phone as, a way to avoid social anxiety, which I think is really interesting when you look at it, because it is true. When you're in a conversation and it's kind of getting awkward for a second, as human beings, we're kind of like, we just grab for our phone because it's like this comfort zone. Yeah. And that is so interesting that we do that, and it's so real.
You can't do that when you're at a phone-free event. And so you sit in that discomfort, that momentary discomfort, and that's where relationships are built. So instead of you being in an elevator with a bunch of strangers and pulling out your phone, which is what typically everybody does, you might go back to what we used to do, which is like, oh my God, I really like those shoes. Where did you get them? And then suddenly you might have a conversation out of the elevator, and you know where the next good shoe sale is and a new friend you can go there with. And so it's in those interstitial moments that start uncomfortably where relationships are formed. And so every time we are using our phone to get back into that comfort zone and not feel that uncomfortable lull of silence, or I don't know what to say next, and just sitting in it, we're doing ourselves a disservice. I mean, we're reaching out to our phones. We use social media to connect with people. We're using it to get that sense of connection. We are tribal creatures. That's how we evolved. But on our phones, it's all surface level. You can't, I guarantee there's nobody that you met, well, this could be a big claim, but how many people that you've met through social media that you haven't met in person could you ask to help you move? I don't need you to answer it specifically, but I guess just more rhetorically, I feel like you don't make deep connections through the comments and the likes. Deep connections are formed in person with people that you share experiences with. And so, yeah.
I get what you mean by that for sure. And I think that what is interesting when you did live your life at a certain point without social media, it's easier to maybe meet somebody through social media, let's say, and really gravitate towards the feeling of what it felt like to actually connect with somebody. So if there's somebody out there, because I know for me in the social media world, it felt really surface level for a long time when I first started doing it, just like you said, and it was a lot of the time. But then when I was able to find certain people who like valued human connection as much as I did, it was like sticking to them like glue, because it was like, oh, okay, like, you're in the same field as me, but you also like to put your phone away and look at me in my eyes and communicate with me, and you're also on this path of like learning how to not be on our phones all of the time. But I think what's really interesting too about what you're talking about is like within younger people too, because like if you're a 15-year-old and you've always had a cell phone, that feeling of social anxiety and picking up your phone when you feel uncomfortable is just almost part of your nature.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely have it the worst.
Yeah.
Because their brains and their social structures are developing in that overstimulated world.
These events are great for them to to know what it feels like, to just be forced to keep it away and to recognize like the fact that you were talking about that when they're at those events, they think about, oh, I keep trying to pull my phone out. Like those are things that like kind of like need to experience to like actually physically feel the addiction.
Yeah. Awareness is required before you can change anything.
Absolutely.
You can't change something unless you're aware of it. A lot of people are aware of it, but might not necessarily think it's an issue. Some people are just completely, just think that that's the norm because that's how they grew up. And the younger you are, probably the more likely. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I mean, I think for them, I can't wait to... Our community is currently more like millennials, but I can't wait to take Brick's message and mission to high schools and colleges. And I feel like when I first started this, social media was cool. The number of followers you had is kind of like what made you cool. And what I'm trying to create is, you can have social media, you can have a lot of followers, you can have a highly curated profile, and that has value, but there's other things that also have a lot of value and exist in the real world, and you're never going to be fulfilled, truly fulfilled through the digital realm. I think that sharing that message with them hopefully will resonate so that they can know that the new cool is maybe having it but not making it your priority.
Definitely. How can people find an event to go to?
On our website, gobricknow.com/events is where we show all of our upcoming events. We're going to soon announce a bunch of events for 2020. We're going to be doing more weekend getaways, which I'm super excited about. Most of the events are in Southern California. With the Brick Method and the private coaching, you can sign up for a free evaluation on our website. That can be with anyone, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in LA.
Well, I encourage the listeners to definitely check that out because it's really, for me, it was really cool to take that survey and just like see my percentage. And we don't normally think about those questions on a daily basis, and we use our phones so much on a daily basis. So stopping for a second and asking those questions is important, and I would love to come to an event. That would be so cool. And can you tell everybody where they can find everything that has to do with Brick?
Yes, gobricknow.com is our website. Our Instagram is also at gobricknow. Those are the two hotspots where you can find most of it. You can also text our number, text the word brick to 844-427-2529. That's our priority text list if you want to get your invites and updates by text. I'd love to have, all your listeners and followers, I I know are interested in mindfulness and self-improvement and finding a healthy balance for themselves and self-care. And so, yeah, I'm just honored that I was able to share the message of digital wellness to them, and hopefully it can be a part of their lifestyle if it's not already.
Yeah, and I'm so honored to have you on too, because what you're doing is so cool, and your background and where you come from is so special for your journey, and it just makes so much sense that you're doing what you're doing. So thank you so much for being here and being on the podcast. And before you go, I'm going to make you do a soul sugar moment, because we do that at the end of each episode.
Great, let's do it.
You know, if you could lead the listeners with a little soul sugar moment to make them feel good, or a challenge or a question or whatever it may be.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to offer a short exercise that anybody can do if they're feeling a craving to check their phone when they don't want to. So if you're trying to focus on something more important, or if you've just woken up in the middle of the night and you feel the urge to check your phone and you've listened to this, or you're trying to practice what we're talking about, I would love for you listeners out there to think of one happy memory. So give yourself a minute to decide what that happy memory is. And the moment you feel a craving to check your phone in whatever the situation is, I want you to think about that happy memory instead. And that happy memory will be the antidote to checking your phone. The human mind doesn't know the difference between an imagined experience and an actual experience. So every time you think of that time you threw the final pitch at the baseball game, which is one of mine, or that one day with your significant other on the beach, every time you reflect on that, it actually releases chemicals in your body as if it's actually happening, those feel-good chemicals. And so often when we're checking our phone, we're trying to feel better, relieve, I wonder what the message is. And so if instead of getting the dopamine from that, get the dopamine from a feel-good memory. That would be my soul sugar moment.
I love that. I'm going to do that too.
Cool.
Cool.
Let me know
Thank
how
you.
it goes.
I will.
Thank
You so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. And thank you all for listening. Talk to you guys soon in an all new episode of Soul Sugar Podcast.